It happened on a bright, cloudless afternoon in New York City. The kind of day when everything looked perfect on the outside, but for Ethan Cole, life had been anything but perfect for years. He stood in front of the glittering glass doors of the Astoria Grand Hotel, wearing a suit he hadn't owned but borrowed, his hands trembling as he adjusted his tie. Inside that hotel waited a world he didn't belong to: wealth, fame, flashing cameras, and one woman who was about to change his life forever. He had no idea that by sunset he would walk out not as a stranger, but as the husband of a billionaire, a pretend one at least. If you believe that kindness and second chances can change someone's entire story, then take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal, where stories like this remind us that love often begins where hope almost ends. Ethan Cole was 34, a single father, and a man who had learned to survive on scraps of faith and hard work. 3 years ago, his wife Mara had passed away from a sudden illness, leaving him to raise their 6-year-old daughter Lily alone. He worked as a construction foreman during the day and washed dishes at a diner at night, his life running on exhaustion and quiet resilience. But through every storm, Lily's laughter kept him going, her bright smile, her wild hair, her endless questions about when Mommy would see their new house in heaven. Then came the letter. It was an invitation, not to a wedding, not to a reunion, but to an event that felt like another universe. The Harrison Foundation Charity Gala, written in elegant gold. Ethan's boss had chosen him, of all people, to deliver construction blueprints to the foundation's CEO, Isla Harrison, one of the most powerful women in the city. Isla was known for her brilliance, her beauty, and her cold distance from everyone who tried to get too close. She had inherited her father's empire after his passing, but rumors swirled that her engagement had recently ended in scandal. Her fiancé had betrayed her with her own assistant. When Ethan stepped inside the marble lobby that afternoon, everything sparkled, chandeliers hung like frozen rain, violins played softly, and people floated in designer gowns and tuxedos. He walked toward the back, clutching the blueprints, when his eyes met hers. Isla Harrison. She was standing near the grand staircase, every head turning when she moved. Her silver gown shimmered in daylight that poured through the glass roof, but her expression, it wasn't pride. It was exhaustion, a quiet ache hiding behind perfection. She saw him too, but not as a stranger. She saw something familiar in his eyes, something real, something human. Then chaos unfolded. Cameras flashed and suddenly a man approached her, tall, confident, smirking. It was her ex-fiancé Bryce, still pretending to be the perfect woman Isla. He taunted loudly, his voice dripping with venom. "I heard you couldn't even find someone to replace me." The crowd murmured, the humiliation palpable. Isla's fingers tightened on her glass, and for the first time, her poise cracked. And that's when she looked at Ethan again. Really looked. She walked straight toward him, her heels clicking against marble, eyes fierce and desperate. "Pretend you're my husband tonight," she whispered under her breath, the words almost trembling. Before he could respond, her hand slipped into his, warm and trembling. She turned to the crowd, her voice calm but sharp. "Actually, Bryce, you're wrong," she said coolly. "Meet my husband, Ethan." The room fell silent. Cameras flashed again, faster this time, capturing their hands entwined, her head leaning lightly on his shoulder. Ethan's heart raced like thunder, but he didn't let go. For a man who had lost everything, he suddenly felt like he was protecting something priceless. Hours passed, and somehow the act continued. They laughed, or rather Isla pretended to, and Ethan followed her lead. They danced under the lights, her head resting near his chest, while whispers spread like wildfire. But beneath the performance, something unspoken bloomed. She felt safe beside him, not because of his words, but because he didn't ask anything from her. And he felt something too, a softness he hadn't known in years. When the night ended, Isla pulled him aside into a quiet garden terrace. "Thank you," she said, her voice breaking slightly. "You saved me from being humiliated in front of everyone who wanted to see me fall." Ethan smiled awkwardly, still unsure why he was there at all. "You don't owe me anything," he said. "I just didn't want to see you hurt." For the first time, she smiled, a real smile. "That's exactly what no one's ever said to me." A week later, Ethan's phone rang. It was Isla. She needed a favor, a pretend marriage for a few weeks. The reason? Investors were threatening to withdraw unless she appeared stable after her broken engagement. She offered him money. enough to pay for Lily's school, the hospital bills he still owed, and the mortgage that haunted him. Ethan hesitated, but when he looked at Lily's sleeping face that night, her small hands clutching her mother's photo, he whispered to himself, maybe this is our second chance. The next morning, the contract was signed. The media went wild. Billionaire marries a construction worker overnight. Every headline screamed disbelief, but behind closed doors, their story unfolded differently. Ethan moved temporarily into Isla's mansion, a world of crystal chandeliers, ocean views, and silence. She lived like someone afraid of being touched, her life measured in meetings and guarded smiles. But then came Lily, small, curious, unstoppable Lily. She ran through the marble halls like sunshine itself, her laughter echoing where no laughter had been heard in years. She made Isla paint with her, dance barefoot in the garden, and read bedtime stories at night. Slowly, Isla began to change, not because she wanted to, but because the little girl made her remember how to feel. Ethan watched it all silently, torn between gratitude and guilt. He was falling for a woman he could never have, a woman who lived in another world. But one evening, when the sun spilled gold across the horizon, Isla sat beside him on the balcony. "You know what's strange?" she said softly. "I've had everything money can buy, but I've never had anyone look at me the way you do, like I'm real." He looked at her then, really looked. "That's because you are," he whispered. For a moment, silence wrapped around them like a promise neither dared to speak. Days turned into weeks, and the line between pretending and feeling blurred. Reporters adored their love story. Business partners were convinced. But behind every smile, Ethan's heart ached. Because he knew that when this ended, he'd go back to his old life and she'd go back to hers. Still, he couldn't deny that she had become part of his family in ways no contract could explain. Then came the night everything broke. During another charity event, Bryce appeared again, this time with venom in his voice and proof in his hands. He revealed to the press that Ethan was not a billionaire, not even close, and accused Isla of fabricating their marriage to save her company. Chaos erupted. Cameras flashed and people shouted questions. Isla's face turned pale, and Ethan's instinct kicked in. He stepped forward, taking her hand once again. "You're right," Ethan said firmly to the cameras. "I'm not a billionaire. I'm a construction worker. But I didn't marry Isla for money. I married her because sometimes the richest hearts come from the poorest places. And she made me believe I could be someone again." The room went still. Isla's eyes shimmered with tears. For the first time, she didn't care about the cameras or the headlines. She walked up to him, placed her hand on his chest, and whispered, "You were never pretending, were you?" He shook his head. Not for a second. What followed was silence, and then applause. Real, thunderous applause. Because in that moment, people saw something true. The world saw that love wasn't about wealth or status. It was about two broken people finding home in each other. Weeks later, Isla visited Ethan's modest apartment for the first time. She sat on his worn couch, holding Lily in her lap, her designer dress brushing against the old rug. "Do you think," she asked quietly, "we could stop pretending now?" Ethan smiled, his eyes soft. "We stopped pretending a long time ago." By the next spring, the newspapers no longer called him the construction worker. They called him Ethan Harrison, the man who taught a billionaire how to be human again. The company thrived not because of wealth, but because Isla had started something new, a program that funded single parents who'd lost everything. Ethan ran it with her. And every morning, Lily would run through the office halls, her laughter the sound of everything they had rebuilt together. If this story touched your heart, if you believe love can be found in the most unexpected moments, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us bring more stories that remind the world that compassion still exists. And before you go, comment below. Would you have said yes if someone had asked you to pretend for one night, only to find the love that felt more real than anything else? The end.